now. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Dan Crawl here for episode 35. On episode 34 last week, I had Candace Wilson and her dad Dave on with me talking about winning national championships in volleyball down at Central College. Check that out if you haven't already. Tonight, though, I have two-time state wrestling champion Duane Cook with me. Duane, how you doing tonight?
Good.
Good. I'm excited to have Duane on here. We had to reschedule a couple times. I think we were supposed to do this back in November, and we weren't quite ready for it. So I was excited when we got the green light and the thumbs up to go on it. So before we get to Duane, though, I recognize my sponsors like always. I was telling Duane earlier, my sponsors, all that money goes to the Sanger Legacy Fund. I'm sure a lot of you know that. I have 13 sponsors tonight. So thanks to everyone who sponsored. If you'd like to sponsor an episode or two or 5 or 10, please get a hold of me and let me know. My sponsors tonight: Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Mary Jo's Hobo House and Catering, J. Hiscocks of State Farm Insurance, First State Bank, Mojo Productions, Daniel's Auto Collision, Diemer Realty, Katie's Salon and Tanning. I have an anonymous sponsor tonight: Nick Schmidt, the Britt Car, Truck, Bike, and Tractor Night Cruises, Miller and Son Golf Cars, and Chad Trulson. There's no winter sports updates because winter sports are over and we're not quite to spring yet, but boys and girls golf and boys and girls track will be starting up here shortly. Like always, go to the sangerstrong.com to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund. It was created to honor the late great Coach Bob Sanger and his wife, former teacher Mrs. Linda Sanger. You can go to sangerstrong.com. That links you up to the Mankato Area Foundation site. You can give recurring payments there if you'd like. Way back when, 10 episodes ago, on episode 25, I talked to Jay and Kevin. We did the state football championship game podcast talking about the West Hancock versus Grundy Center game. 20 episodes ago, on episode 15, I had Jim Trulson, 98-year-old man still living in Britt, still working every day. And 30 episodes ago, on episode 5, I had the 1973 state championship football team on with me. Bunch of guys that would have just been getting out of high school, I think, when you were getting in, or maybe were you a freshman that year, Duane? Do you remember?
I was a freshman, yeah.
Freshman year, yeah, that's right. All right, I get to my first sponsor here, and then we're going to get talking about wrestling with Mr. Duane Cook. Daniel's Auto Collision in Charles City is one of my sponsors. Owner Jason Daniels is a 1990 West Hancock graduate. Whether you need a minor fix-up or complete collision repair, Daniel's Auto Collision is North Iowa's premier auto body shop, and they'll have your vehicle back on the road in no time, looking better than new. With over 30 years experience and all major insurances accepted, why take your chances with anyone else other than Daniel's Auto Collision? Call them at 641-220-3805. Email them at danielsautocollision@gmail.com or check them out at danielsautocollision.com. All right, Duane, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So what I always do on these podcasts, I always like to start with just talking about your childhood, your upbringing, your family a little bit. Talk about growing up in Britt in the 70s.
Well, growing up, I was the oldest of 4 boys, and so there was always plenty to do. And Dad taught us wrestling at an early age, and baseball and football, and being in a neighborhood of a lot of kids, we like to play football, baseball at the water tower. Yep. And had neighbors, Mark and Jeff Stevenson, and John and Brent Hagan, and Jim Diemer was close by. And in the summertime, I remember Hagen's had a wrestling mat outside, so we got to tussling around and had a lot of neighborhood friends and good times. And so we were pretty close knit in the neighborhood and just enjoyed outdoor sports and playing around with each other.
So you were neighbors with the Hagans and the Stevensons?
They lived a couple of blocks from me, but we'd meet at the water tower, play baseball games and football.
So within a couple block radius, you had what, 3-time state champs and a couple 2-time state champs in wrestling?
Right.
Not bad. Not a bad neighborhood. Yeah. What about your folks? What did they do? And where was your house in Britt?
Well, our house was across from the water tower went up until I was in junior high age, and then we moved a couple of blocks from the high school. But
Okay.
during that younger years, it was just right across from the water tower. Now it's kind of the place to hang out and play ball at. So,
Mhm.
and my dad worked for the Iowa Department of Transportation, as so did Mark and Jeff Stevenson's dad also worked for the DOT. So it was kind of a common ground. And then Wally Hagan worked at the We3 market. So we did a lot of grocery shopping there. I knew them pretty well.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that We3 market. I think that was a pretty big deal back in the day, but it was gone before I was around. My parents moved to Britt in 83 or 84, and Piccadilly Circus Pizza was my parents, and I never remembered We3. It must have been under a different owner at the time, or they shut down. I'm not sure how that went, but yeah. So, and you said you started wrestling early with those guys. Did you have any early wrestling success? Like, did you wrestle in middle school?
Well, we had like grade school tournaments back in elementary that we would enter in and have tournaments. And then my dad would haul us around to different tournaments that you could enter into, and seemed like week after week we'd go to some different wrestling tournament. So
Yeah.
with two brothers around the same age, we were able to wrestle all the time and work out and have a good time.
Yeah. Did you, at that age, did you know you were going to be pretty good, or was it just kind of, I go out there and see what happens type of deal?
Well, at first it was I'll go out there and see how it goes. But when you're learning from our dad taught us from an early age, and he was considerably bigger. But when you started to hang around and can feel success and kind of hanging on longer, or getting the move down better and holding him down more, you kind of gain confidence and stuff. And then when you're wrestling somebody your own age and weight, it's you can see where you were making some progress there.
Yep, definitely. Yep. And you said you have 3 brothers. Is that what you said? 2 are about your
Right.
age?
Well, two my age. My youngest brother's 7 years younger than me.
Okay. Yep. Are they still in the area these days?
Our youngest brother, Don, he works at Winnebago also, and Robert, he's 1 year younger than me. He's living in Fort Dodge, Iowa.
Okay. Is
Him
his
and his
boy
wife.
Sam Cook?
Yeah, his boy is Sam. He was a two-time
Okay.
state champion
Yeah, I was
also.
just gonna say, in my research, I saw that and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I think he has some Brit connections. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Yep. Awesome. Yeah. And then I was just wondering about, if you had any early success, because one of the main stories we're going to talk about tonight is your first state title. I wouldn't say it came out of nowhere, but I don't think you were obviously a favorite to win the state championship as a sophomore. So I was just curious, kind of the lead up to that we'll get to in a little bit. But before we get to your first year of high school wrestling, I'm going to get to my next 2 sponsors. First State Bank in Britt takes pride in their community-based values, and they want to be your bank. They take pride in serving the Eagle Nation communities. They can personalize your banking products to meet the needs of your busy life with free internet banking and their mobile banking app with mobile deposit. Try their bill pay services. First State Bank backs our Eagles 24/7, just like their service to you. First State Bank, whether it's personal business, real estate, or ag loans, they have products to serve you best. That's First State Bank in Britt. And then Mary Jo's Hobo House and Catering in Britt's been a huge West Hancock supporter for over 28 years now. Travel Iowa has voted the Hobo House as having one of the 10 best burgers in all of Iowa. Visit Mary Jo's Hobo House for lunch and breakfast every day at 72 Main Avenue South. Call them at 843-3840. That's Mary Jo's Hobo House and Catering with Linda and Mary Jo Hughes. All right, let's hop into some high school wrestling here. 1974 was your freshman year of wrestling. That means you were a freshman during the 1973 championship football season. And then that rolls into the 74, wrestling ends in 74. How many guys were out for wrestling at that time? Do you remember how full the wrestling room was in 74?
Yeah, there was, we had quite a few out for wrestling. There was probably at least 3 people in every weight class, except for maybe the upper weights might not have been 3
That's
per
cool.
weight, but we had a pretty good turnout back then. There were a lot of people out for wrestling.
Yeah, and sadly nowadays, uh, teams can barely get one guy per weight class sometimes. And then Britt, West Hancock even had that within 15 years ago, where they were having a lot of forfeits. So it's changed a lot, but I'm glad to see Coach Sanger's turn that around here in recent years. Do you off topic slightly from your freshman year, but do you get out to any meets anymore, or keep up with the wrestling team?
I I follow it. I don't get out much because it's February is like the end of our quarter, and February is a really busy month, and in the winter
Yeah,
time, it's just kind of a busy time.
yeah, but keep up with it and see how things are going, at least I'm sure.
Yep.
How did you do your freshman year? In my research, I didn't find a whole lot, because usually in the paper it's more or less who made it through districts, who made it to state, and I see that you didn't make it to state. But how'd you do that season? Were you wrestling varsity at all, or were you on JV?
Yeah, I wrestled varsity at 105, and back then only 2 could qualify for state. I made it to the districts, but I was in the same district as Kevin Brainer from Belmont and Mike Caldwell from Humboldt,
Yeah,
and they both finished 1, 2, and I finished third, but so I didn't make it to state that year. But I
yeah.
remember I'd beat Caldwell 1 time, and he beat me twice that year.
Oh,
Brainer went on to win the state title at 105, and I can't remember. I know Caldwell placed.
okay. How were you close at the sectional tournament of knocking one of those two off to get to districts that would eventually get you to state? Do you remember?
Oh, this was at districts.
That was
I
at
made it to
districts.
districts, but you could only take 2 from districts to
Okay.
state.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, because yeah, they take from two different sectionals and merge them into one district. That's right. Do you think you would have placed pretty high if you were to maybe get shifted to another district and have to face off against those guys? Do you think you could have placed high at that time?
Yeah, I think I could have placed. It's just that unfortunately, was in a district where it was tough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll have those, especially as a freshman. I mean, you're just kind of
Yeah.
learning the ropes and figuring it out. Did you learn a lot from Coach De Leon in that season though, that kind of got you ready for that title run you went on the next couple of years? Describe Coach De Leon to you, to everybody, how he was as a coach.
He was a good coach, and he could get the most out of you. And the one thing for sure is you were always in great shape. That was
Mhm.
best shape of any sport I was in. I was in the absolute best shape, so you didn't have to worry about running out of gas in the last period, or if you went into overtime of not, you know, being able to finish out the match. That was the one thing, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, yep. When I was a freshman in high school, so 2001, 2002, I played basketball. Our basketball team practiced at 6 in the morning, and I wanted to get in a little better shape. So I asked the wrestling coach at the time, Brian Benning, if I could come to one of his practices and practice with the wrestling team to kind of, drop a few pounds, get into shape. And I'll just say that I gained a ton of respect for wrestlers after that, just one practice. I We ran and we ran and we ran and we ran, and then we did some drills and stuff. And I didn't do a whole lot of those because I'm like, I'm not gonna get hurt doing this. But between the running and the drills and stuff, I walked out of that room going, number one, I could never be a wrestler. And number two, those guys are studs. I was very impressed by what you guys had to go through to get to do what you did, and then to go and do as well as you did at the state levels, even more impressive. So a lot of kudos I throw out there to you wrestlers. We always joke that you're a different breed of people because you have to be pretty dedicated to it. You can't just show up and see what happens. You got to put the work in. So you know.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to get to a couple more sponsors here because, like I said, we have 13 of them. Michael and Brienne Ewing of Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company with locations in Britt, Kanawha, Clarion, Belmont, and Dow's. Mike is a 1998 graduate of West Hancock, and his family's been privileged to care for the communities of Britt and Kanawha since 1977. You can find them online at ewingfh.com or on Facebook, or give them a call at 843-3839 or 762-3211. That's Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, This awesome funeral home has sponsored every one of my podcasts since about episode 5. So I always want to thank them for their longevity. And then I want to thank the Britt Car, Truck, Bike, and Tractor Night Cruise for sponsoring 30 of my episodes coming up here this year. Jared Wingert and company run these great events, which will take place on July 20th, August 17th, and September 21st of this year. They're all on Wednesday nights, so it should be easy to get out to. He also owns Mojo Productions and has lived in Britt for over 15 years now. The 5th annual event has free kids activities, trophies are presented for all categories, and a $1,000 award is given out at each show. You can't beat free admission and great food and drink from Britt, local vendors only. Check out the video on their website, brittcarcruise.com. All right, we're going to talk about championship number 1, Duane. There's a cool Facebook page out there called the Pin Doctors, and the Pin Doctors, they do wrestling stories and the history of Iowa wrestling, and they highlighted you. I think it's been a couple of years now, and that's when I found out, like, oh, I need to talk to this guy and do the podcast with him, talking about how you kind of worked your way through some upsets. They said that you slayed dragon after dragon on your way to your championships and made a name for yourself. Describe the difference from your freshman year to your sophomore year. Were you more confident? Were you stronger? I'm assuming you maybe went up a weight class or so to fill out a little bit.
Yeah, I just felt stronger. I didn't have to worry about cutting weight as much. As a freshman, I cut quite a bit of weight, so that was a huge relief. I didn't have to worry quite so much about making weight.
Yeah.
My sophomore year, I just felt a little stronger and a little more seasoned, so to speak.
Yep, a little experience.
My sophomore year versus my freshman year.
Yep. Talk about cutting weight back in the 70s, because nowadays there's all sorts of rules and regulations on cutting weight. Back then, was it fair game, do whatever you have to do type of thing?
It was fair game back then. We used to have sweatsuits on and sit in tents, and you just go wrestle match after match, and as soon as you're done, go in so that you could sweat and lose that weight to get down to your weight.
Yeah.
Work hard and sweat. That was the only watch what you ate.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of, they're called infrared blankets that they have now? There's a thing called My High is what I've heard it called. It's a it's like a tarp, a thick tarp, and it has infrared heat inside of it that you control electronically, and you wrap yourself up in it and set the timer for like 45-50 minutes. I tried it once, and within about a half an hour, your clothes are completely soaked. You're just completely drenched, and it helps you drop weight fast and detox and all that. And I've heard people are doing that nowadays too, on top of the running and everything else. But there's more control to it, is what I've heard and been told by wrestlers nowadays. Probably not for not a bad reason for it, because it probably got a little unhealthy at times to do what some guys were doing. But yeah. All right. You were 17-7-2 going into the state meet. I have down my notes that you wrestled at 119, so you did go up a class or two. And this was back when you guys were in class 1A. How did you get to state? Talk about your road leading up to just making it there as a sophomore. Do you remember districts and sectionals?
In districts, I finished second in our district to Casey Robb, making it to the state my sophomore year.
Okay. Yeah. So typically, do you remember many guys getting second in their district but actually winning the state title? Was that pretty not very common, I assume?
Probably not very common.
Yeah, that guy who won
it's you get some districts where you happen to have two of the very best happen to be in the same district, but that doesn't happen too often. But it does happen.
Well, up in North Iowa, I mean, you always had Osage and Hampton and Clarion and Eagle Grove and
right,
a lot of good schools usually. So at state first round, you beat Mike Olson of Marcus, which is now MMCRU with all the consolidations. He was 6th the year before at state, and you beat him 7-6. Do you remember any details about that match? Was it a come from behind type of win, or did you lead the whole way? Do you remember how that one went down?
I don't remember that one so much. I think I I think it was back and forth. I led most of the time, and then he'd score, and then it was back and forth, but I was always ahead. But it was a back and forth match.
Yep. Were you a wrestler who, once you had a lead, was it pretty tough to come back on you?
Yeah, yeah. Once I
Yeah.
had a lead, I was pretty hard to
Yeah.
relinquish my lead.
Were there a lot of pins in your weight class, like the lower weight classes, or was it more you wrestled it out to a 7-6 type of match? Do you remember a lot of how they turned out for you?
There
Or
were some
anybody in
pins.
general?
There were some pins, but it was mostly just wrestled out.
Yep. Go, go, go. The little guys, just high motors, I'm sure.
Yep.
Quarterfinals, you beat Dennis Reed from Lennox 3-2, and the paper said you were behind in that match. Dennis Reed was third the year before. Talk about that comeback a little bit if you remember much.
I don't remember that one. So I remember he took me down in the first period, and I was able to escape. And I can't remember either if I reversed him or took him down after that. But he got the first takedown, and I was able to ride him pretty good, and I could get away from him. And so that gave me confidence to be able to ride, and I knew he couldn't hold me. And I don't remember if I took him down or got a reversal, but I know he took me down first and got ahead, and I got an escape. I remember that, and got away.
Yep. So he scored quick, and that was it for him. Yep. And that gets you to the semifinals. Charles, I don't want to say Kress or Cressy, I'm not sure how you say his last name, from Maxwell. He had a 27-1 record going into the match with you, but you beat him 10-2 to make it to the finals. What was the difference in that one, beating him by 8 compared to a couple 1-point squeakers?
I just felt looser, and just after seeing Brent and Mark kind of putting together good matches, I was just kind of gaining confidence and just wanted to keep going. So I just think I was looser and just, let it fly, so to speak.
Yeah.
Put it wide open more in that match.
I should have asked this before. What was it like when you stepped onto the mat for the first time at the old Vets Auditorium? What was the atmosphere like, or the nerves that you were feeling? Do you remember that?
I was pretty nerved up because it's packed, and there's a lot of people there, and a lot more than you've ever been seen before. So yeah, it's an experience. It's a good experience, but you're pretty nerved up. And
yeah, and what I've talked to some other wrestlers, Coach De Leon was so good at helping you guys just focus on what you were supposed to focus on. Was he talking to you quite a bit beforehand, just helping ease those nerves a little bit?
Oh yeah, it's just, you can do it. You just got to go out there and wrestle your match. Just you can beat this guy. So
yeah. And
your confidence before you go out there.
Yeah, and in the podcasts I've done where we've talked about Coach De Leon, it sounds like he never had anything like complex, crazy, like, oh my, like no one else has ever thought of this before. He just had that ability to keep it simple, but you guys had so much respect for him and trusted him so much that that's all it took was, you can beat this guy. And like, if Coach De Leon tells me I can beat this guy, I can beat this guy. Is that pretty much what he was like?
Yeah, he was like that. He was just you can go out there and just, you can beat this guy.
Yep. Doesn't have to be crazy complex, just putting that confidence in you. So so that was your semifinal match. That gets you into the finals. We're going to get to your match with Dave Finken of Tri-Center Neola here in a second. I'm going to get to a couple quick sponsors here. Jay Hiscocks, State Farm Team in Britt, is a proud supporter of West Hancock and the Sanger Legacy Fund. They can help you with all your insurance needs, including auto, home, life, farm, business, and renter's insurance. For a free quote or review, give Jay or Lindsay a call at 843-3563. Go Eagles, says Jay. And thanks to Jay and Lindsay and this team for hopping on board and sponsoring a whole bunch of these episodes. And then Nick Schmidt is a 2000 West Hancock graduate. He simply wanted to give back to the Sanger Legacy Fund. No businesses attached. So thanks as always again to Nick Schmidt for sponsoring. All right, Duane, state title match number 1, sophomore year. Dave Finken of Tri-Center Neola. He was the defending state champion. So you beat a guy who was 6th the year before, a guy who was 3rd the year before, a guy with a 27-1 record, and now you have the defending state champion. Didn't obviously matter a whole lot to you what he did the year before, because you won that match 1-0. In the paper, I read that you almost got called for stalling. And in my research, I found you're one of only 4 sophomores in all 3 classes to win a title that year. Describe that 1-0 match against the defending state champ for us.
I was, I remember in the first period that I almost took him down, but they called us out of bounds. And I remember that gave me a lot of confidence. Then the second period, he chose down and I was able to ride him out. I remember that. And then in the last period, I remember him, I'd almost be away, but he'd push me off the mat, and it was getting down there. And finally I was able to get my escape on him. I don't know if there was 20 seconds, 30 seconds left, but I remember getting an escape, and then he tried an all out last move, but I didn't score no points, but he was on his back. It was like a desperation move. But yeah, that third period, it was just where, I'd just about be away and off the mat, That was one of the most draining matches. Spending a lot of energy to get the 1 point.
Yeah. Did it feel like the longest match of your career? It was like, how come this is not getting, how come the time's not out yet?
That was one of the longest matches. Like I say, it was just, spending a lot of energy and almost get it, but then you're off the mat, got to go restart. So,
yep. How did you celebrate? Do you remember what you did right after the match? You always see those kids on the, on the live stream doing a flip, or they jump into their coach's arms, or they run up to their parents. Do you remember what you did when you won that title?
I just think to myself, all right, yeah.
Yeah, hands up in the air, probably, just that common, talk about after the match, because you guys as a team were state runner-ups. Brent Hagen won a title, so did Mark Stevenson, those buddies you talked about earlier. You're only 7.5 points away from winning the team title, and you're 16.5 points better than third place Durant. Did you guys have anything back at the school afterwards? You remember the celebration with your family, your friends at school? What'd that look like?
Yeah, we had a celebration and they made us a big cake. Remember having a picture for that, to come home and to celebrate. And then they had a thing for us in the auditorium where Mr. De Leon had us out and brought us out and introduced us. I remember that they had homecoming there for us after we got back, and finished second with, like you say, Brent and Mark and myself.
Yeah. Do you remember who else qualified that year? Didn't Jim Diemer place pretty high that year as well?
Jim was
he would have graduated
in my freshman year. He finished third. Yeah.
Third. Okay. Yeah. I'm off a couple years. Never mind. But I know he was on those teams that won state. Was it 71, 72, 73? Yeah. I'm off a little bit. Yeah. You guys were runner up. So there was a nice string there of pretty much every year was top 2 in the state, I believe. I'm off the top of my head. So that was a pretty big deal back in the day. Britt was on a pretty good run, state championship in football, several state wrestling championships, eventually a state track championship. Girls volleyball, I believe, was heading to state a couple of those years, your last couple of years. So Britt athletics were doing all right back then. So yeah. How did that put any pressure on you? You're a sophomore, you won state. Did you feel the pressure like you had to win 2 more or at least 1 more, or was it just kind of go with it?
It was just kind of, I wanted to win 2 more, but it's like it's hard to repeat because people want to knock you off, but the drive to just want to do it again. And
yep. What'd you do in the off season between that sophomore junior? Did you go do a lot of camps or anything like that, or did you and your buddies just hit the mat again like you always did in school?
I didn't really do many. I didn't do any camps, but usually detasseled, and that was pretty good hard work.
Yep.
To earn some money in the summertime, because that was the way you did it, and that was some hard work.
Yeah. Do you remember what they paid you back in the day in the 70s for detasseling?
Oh wow, I don't remember off the top of my head, but
yeah.
It didn't seem like it was enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking like nowadays, you get some high school kids, if you're not paying them probably $15 an hour, they're probably not doing it. But back then, my mom always used to talk about I'd babysit 4 kids for like 35 cents an hour, and I thought that was great, just different time. So yeah. All right, I got a few more sponsors to get to, and then we'll get to your second title. Mojo Productions is based in Britt, Iowa. They're your full service DJ business with 15 full-time DJs that work pretty much every weekend. They specialize in wedding DJs. They're fully insured. They give back to the community. And like I said earlier, Jared is also the presenter of the Britt Car, Truck, Bike, and Tractor Nights. Contact Jared at 515-408-1074. Send him a message on Facebook. I just talked to Jared today. He was trying to help me do some technology stuff that I'm not so good at. So thanks to Jared for that as well. Katie's Salon and Tanning is another sponsor owned by Katie Walk, whose son Braden is currently a senior at West Hancock. They are located on Main Street in Titonka. They have been for about 16 years. Services offered are men's, women's, children's haircuts, colors, perms, waxes, styles, tanning, plus many brands of retail are available. Find Katie's Salon on Facebook or Instagram. Call her at 928-2303 for appointments. Go Eagles, says Katie. All right, junior year, 1976 was your second state title. Like you said, you kind of had a bullseye on your back at the time. Repeating is pretty tough to do because just like you did the season before, you knocked off the defending state champ. Now that was what people wanted to do to you, was knock you off that top spot. You weren't the underdog anymore. Everyone knew who you were. Again, did it feel different in the practice room and when you went to meets that you were a defending champ, or did you just kind of have to wipe that off your mind and take care of business match by match?
Yeah, you just gotta take care of business match by match, because it doesn't, what you've done in the past doesn't matter what you're doing right at the general moment. You've got to put that behind and match by match.
Yeah. Well, did you watch any of the state wrestling this year?
Yeah,
hear about it.
Yeah.
The kid who won 3 state titles and was going for 4 was up 5-0 and he lost in overtime. The kid that beat him is from Indianola, and we know his family a little bit. The kid who knocked off that 3-time defending state champ. Some people are like, yep, that kid from Indianola here, he didn't care that kid had won 3 state titles. It didn't matter at that point. So it's what's in front of you is what matters. So yep, you bumped up to 126. I assume that's again, so you didn't have to worry about cutting weight too much.
No, not too much.
Yeah, that helps. This championship that you won was the last. You were the last Brit wrestler to win a championship for 8 years until I believe the Finch and the Kelly boys showed up a little bit later in the 80s. You wrestled in the Grundy Center District. Was it an easy road to get to state through districts, or did you have a pretty tough time getting out of that district?
Well, it was just Casey Robb was in the same district, and I did lose to him at the district, but the rest of the field wasn't near as pressing as my sophomore year, but he was definitely good, and you could take 2 out of every district to make the state. So
yeah, just had to get in that top 2.
Yeah.
Yep. So down at state, you're experienced. You know what it's like to be down there. You've been in the spotlight. You won some big matches. First round, Kevin Leonard of Midland, Wyoming. You won that match 5-1. In the quarterfinals, you beat Russ Juergens of Gilmore City, Bradgate 5-2. So I'm not a huge wrestling guy, but what I've been told is a 5-1, 5-2 match. To me, they look like, oh, that's kind of a close match. But when you're up 3 and 4 points at the state tournament, you've got that guy fairly in control. Semifinals, Charles Cressy, Maxwell, rematch from the 1975 semifinals. You won that match 3-1. Do you remember much about that rematch with Cressy, however you say his last name?
Just that it was it wasn't one of my better matches that I'd wrestled at the state tournament, but I was just happy to come off with the win. I don't know what it was, but it just wasn't one of my better matches that I wrestled.
But
just wasn't able to get my offense.
Yeah. when you're not wrestling well and you're still winning 3-1, I'd say you're in a good groove there and got something going. But and then the guy you mentioned earlier, state championship match, Casey Robb of LaPorte City. Like you said, you lost to him at the district tournament, but you got him in the big when it mattered. That's when it means something. No one remembers who got second at districts. They remember who got first at state. And you make sure you took care of business there. Talk about that second championship match, or that second championship win and your rematch with Rob.
It was when I took him down, that was in the first period. That was a real confidence booster right there. And just a lot of it's mental, and when you can go into a match like that with the pressure and just let it rip or just let it fly, and not a lot of times you can hold back, and you just don't want to do that. I was guilty of doing that before, when you know that guy's good, so you're not exerting yourself or putting it all out there like you say you do in a practice or whatever.
Yeah.
But that match, it just helped that I was just able to just let it go.
Yep. Same thing. What was the celebration like afterwards? You got into that pretty elite company, because not too many people can say they've won multiple championships. What was that like for you?
I think I jumped into De Leon's arms after that one.
Yeah.
I was pretty happy about that, because I'd lost to that guy just a week before, and then come back and dominate him in the state finals. I was happy.
Yeah. I know we talk a lot about De Leon and what he did, but like he found a way to get guys to peak at the right time, apparently. You can get second at districts but still make it to state, and then boom, you're winning a state championship. Did he do anything differently with you, knowing that you'd probably face this Rob guy again, or was it again just you got him, no big deal?
Yeah, just you can get this guy, and just wrestle your match.
Yep. And it was just you and your brother Bob at state that year, right?
Right.
Yep. How'd Bob do?
Back then, when you got beat in the first round, you weren't able to wrestle back.
Oh, okay.
Like you are now. That year he had beaten Schaumburg from Eagle Grove once, and Schaumburg was a state champion. So I mean, he had potential, but he was sick too, battling. He wasn't totally up to health when the tournament came around. So that, trying to deal with that, didn't help him.
Yeah, bad.
But he was definitely capable, because he beat a state champion. So
yep. And was that his senior year? Was he older than you, or was he younger?
He was younger than me. We were in the same grade, but we're 8 days, we're the same age.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yep. How else did he do in wrestling? Did he make it to state any other years?
He made it to state twice, I believe it was.
Twice.
And then my other brother Bill made it to state, 2 years younger than me.
Okay, nice. And then we were saying earlier, Sam, be your nephew, won 2 state championships over at Fort Dodge, and then did he play football at Iowa for a while?
He went there to play football, and then changed his mind, and then wrestled at the University of Iowa.
Okay, how'd he end up doing? I can't recall. Did he have any success there?
He went into some tournaments, but he couldn't beat out 97-pounder that they've got there wrestling right now.
Okay. Yeah, but
it's pretty tough to make the Hawkeye squad.
I was just say I say, did he have any success? But just to be on that team, I'd say I'd call that a success in itself right there. That'd be pretty fun just to be a part of that program. So yeah. Going into your senior year, so 2 titles. You said freshman year you probably could have placed at state, but you've won 2 now. You have 1 year to go. How driven were you to win that third one?
I wanted a third one, but I think I'd gotten pneumonia that year in the winter. I tried to come back too soon and was running out of gas, and kind of tore up my shoulder at the end of the season. And that's in my second match at state. my senior year, my shoulder went out of place and they couldn't put it back in, so I just had to forfeit the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, yeah, that has to hurt, literally and figuratively. We're going to get to that here in a sec. I'm going to recognize two of my sponsors. I have an anonymous donor. They wanted to give $50 for this specific episode. So thank you to that anonymous person for giving. And then Chad Trulson is also sponsoring the episode. Chad is a 1992 West Hancock graduate, and he's become a good friend of mine over the last couple of years. He just wanted to say, Duane, that he loves your story, your background, and he wanted to really sponsor this episode tonight because he was inspired by what he remembered from your couple championship run there. So thanks to Chad for always being so generous. He's very giving to the Legacy Fund and always helping me when I need him. So thank you to those two for sponsoring. Like I said, like you were saying, you made it back to state your senior year. That would have been 1990 or 1977. You won your first round match against Kevin Leonard of Midland, who you faced in the first round the year before. You beat him 2-0. And then, like you already pointed out, you injured your shoulder again or re-aggravated it against Rob Leeper of Leon. Did you think about wrestling with a bad shoulder, or was it to the point where you knew you wouldn't be able to do anything?
Well, it had come out of it. Totally went out of place. Normally it would rotate out and come right back in and I could keep going. It hurt,
Yeah.
but this time it rotated. It wouldn't go back in. So I couldn't go on until they had to take me to the hospital and have the doctor put it back into place.
Yeah. Shoot. So yeah, Leeper moved on due to injury default. Ended your chance at 3 state titles. Did you have long-term problems with that shoulder, or did it eventually, you're young enough, it kind of healed itself, or did you have to have surgery or anything?
Yeah, I did end up having to have surgery and I lost some mobility from then, but I mean, overall, I'm happy with it, but some of the mobility I had from prior to that, I'd lost some range of motion in it compared to the other shoulder.
Yeah. Were you being recruited at all to wrestle in college at this point?
Yeah, I was being recruited, but because of my shoulder, it just kind of hindered things.
Yeah. Do you remember who was looking at you or talking to you about wrestling for him?
Nebraska and some junior colleges, Cook, Nebraska, and Iowa Central, and it's been a long time. I don't remember.
Yeah.
All.
Did you want to wrestle in college? Was it the
I wanted to wrestle in college, but I knew once I tore up my shoulder that it just wasn't, it wasn't the same. I mean, I just wasn't the same after that.
Yeah, I asked because wrestling's such a grueling sport. You always hear about people that even though they had a lot of success, probably could have wrestled at the next level, but they're just kind of get burnt out by the end, and gets to that point where you're just like, yeah, I gotta hang her up. I didn't know if you were kind of feeling that or you still had the drive to keep going. Sounds like you did. So, all right. Do you I hate to ask this because I don't want to bring up any more bad memories, but how confident do you think, as of now, that you would have won that 3rd title if your shoulder was in good shape? Did you have a good path to win it, or are you feeling confident you probably would have won it again?
I feel like I could have, if my shoulder would have been healthy, that I would have won it.
Yeah. Do you remember who won it that year?
I don't know.
Okay, I would say we could set up a rematch, a match with you and that guy, and go for a title, but it'd be fun to watch. So yeah. But I did learn Leeper, the guy who won over you because of the injury default, he had the injury default in the next round. And therefore, because of that, and 2 of you guys getting knocked out, they did not award 6th place to anybody that year in that weight class. So it's just like sitting there empty because there was no one left to claim that place at the tournament. I'm like, I'm curious how many times that's happened before, because you wouldn't think it would be that common, but I thought that was interesting. All right, we get to another sponsor here, and then we're going to talk a few other things and wrap it up. Thanks to Diemer Realty for renewing their commitment to the podcast. That's Renee Diemer with Diemer Realty, hometown hospitality and service with a smile. That's what Diemer Realty is all about, helping buyers and sellers make a smooth transition when moving within or to the area is their top priority. Serving North Central Iowa since 1999, Diemer Realty has steadily grown over the years, establishing an outstanding record of sales in the North Iowa area that speaks volumes to their dedication to every customer. That's Diemer Realty. Go to diemerrealty.net to check them out. And then Miller & Son Golf Cars is one of my new sponsors I plugged into this episode. They're family owned and operated with over 50 years of business experience. Skip and Jim Miller worked together with their dad, Monty, until his passing in 1996. Associated with EasyGo, Miller & Sons now calls on over 1,000 golf cars in 3 different states. Companies and courses are always extremely happy with their products, their service, and their honesty. This has resulted in double-digit growth each passing year. Based in Britt, just outside of Britt, Miller & Sons employs 18 full-time employees and 3 part-timers. The next generation is being trained as we speak to ensure long-term stability. For more information, contact them at 843-4132. Email them at customerservice@millergolfcars.com or visit them online at millergolfcars.com. Thanks to Miller & Sons. All right, we already talked about your brothers a little bit. But where did you end up after high school then? You said you didn't get a wrestle in college. What happened after you graduated from Britt?
After I graduated from Britt, I worked at Winnebago for 1 year and then was able to get on with the Department of Transportation out of Ames, Iowa, and worked there until I was laid off. And then after that, I delivered motorhomes for a driveway company for Winnebago that delivered them to all of our dealerships and did that for 5 or 6 years. And then I went out and I worked and lived in Alaska for 9 years.
Oh,
And
what was
then
that
after
like?
well, that was it was great at first, but I was on the Aleutian Island in a place called Dutch Harbor, which is on the Aleutian Islands in a seafood processing industry. And it was great for a while.
Yeah. Just
But
like
like an
anything.
island, you just kind of,
Yeah.
you
there's
see
so
kind
much
of
to-
everything that there is. And then I lived in Seattle for a couple of years. I have a lot of relations, still lives in the Seattle area. And then I moved back to Iowa in this area in September of 2000 and been here ever since, working at Winnebago.
Nice. Yeah, I'm doing my research on you. Was it your dad and your brother moved out to Washington? One of
Yeah.
your brothers had, was it MS, I believe it was?
Yeah, my brother Bill. Yeah, because
Okay.
it was more of a milder climate for him. It didn't have the extremes, the heat or the cold in the winters. So
Yep.
I had uncles and aunts that lived out there and cousins. So
Nice. Yeah, a buddy and I actually looked at teaching jobs out in Alaska, and the people that were kind of recruiting us out there to teach and coach were telling us that it's pretty desolate out there, as most people know. If we were coaching football, our away games, we'd have to take a charter plane to get our team to the away game. And I looked at my buddy and I'm like, I don't know about that. I think I'm good here in Iowa. So we never explored it any further, but it would have been kind of cool to check it out. So yeah. Real quick here before we wrap it up, I found some stuff on you in track. You won a state title in the 440-yard relay. I believe that was 1977 with Jeff Nielsen, Bob, and Brent Swanson. Do you remember much about winning a state track championship?
yeah, we had a great sprint relay team. We finished second overall as a team. Our, like you say, the 440-yard relay team finished first. Our 880-yard relay team finished second, and Jeff Nielsen was a freshman and he finished third in the 100 open. And we had a shot putter that finished fourth or fifth, like Tom Savoy.
Okay.
And Bob Eisman finished in the top 4 somewhere in the high jump that year. So we had a really good track team.
Do you have any good Bob Eisman stories to share? Bob's son was my college roommate, and I still know the Eismans really well.
Well, he was a good kid, good hard worker, and he could jump.
Same Bob Eisman I know.
Great high
Good-
jumper
good
back
kid,
then.
yeah. Yeah. I had them on Bob and Craig on a month ago on the podcast, and Bob was saying he doesn't know if he could jump under the bar anymore, let alone over it. So like that, I'd still like to see that though, Bob. So if we can ever get out to the track, let's do that. I'd like to watch. So talk about Coach Sanger a little bit. You played football, you ran track for him. What was Coach Sanger like back in the day?
He was great to work for. He was a great coach. We were fortunate to have Coach Sanger and Coach DeLeon for the sports that I was in. Coach Sanger was our track coach also, and a lot of the football players he'd like to have out for track because it was great. A great sport for being in condition, and it was fun. It was just fun to work with him.
Yep. When I was in high school, he'd see me in the hallway and be like, Carl, see you next month at track practice. And he'd be like, yes, sir, I'll be there. Like, don't have a choice apparently anymore, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. So yeah, you guys in your state runner-ups that season. They won state in 74. It would have been your freshman year, I believe. Your team only lost the title by 3.5 points to Corning, and you're 1 point ahead of Panora Linden, which is down not far from here, where I'm teaching. They're in our conference. So you had a pretty well-rounded sports career, athletics career at Britt. Talk about school itself and your teachers. Who are some of the teachers that you still remember these days?
I remember Dave Beach and Wilbur Friesman and Jim Timmerman and Fred Swisher.
Was Grand Jeanette?
Yeah, Bob Grand Jeanette, right?
Was Jim Pauls there when you were? Did he come
Jim Pauls? He was there. I don't know if I had Jim for a teacher. I don't think I did.
Okay, he was one of my favorites. I had him his last couple of years of teaching before he retired. He was quite the character. So
Denny Brum,
Denny Brum, yep. He did a podcast with me right early on. He did a great job. It's just fun. There's a lot of the teachers you had are the teachers I had as well, a couple decades later. So we were pretty blessed in Britt with teachers that stayed for a long time and were pretty dedicated to their craft. It's always fun to talk about. So yeah, all right, we're gonna wrap this thing up. Before we say goodbye, I just want to recognize my sponsors one more time, like always. Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Mary Jo's Hobo House and Catering, J. Hiscocks of State Farm Insurance, First State Bank, Mojo Productions, Daniel's Auto Collision, Diemer Realty, Katie's Salon and Tanning, my anonymous sponsor, Nick Schmidt, the Britt Car, Truck, Bike, and Tractor Night Cruises, Miller & Son Golf Cars, and Chad Trulson. My next 5 podcasts coming up, I have Irvin Gomez from the last state championship team here of 2021, Bob Horner, who was at Britt when you were in school. I just talked to Bob the other day getting ready for the podcast. Jeff Nielsen, like we just mentioned, in track, John Weiland, and Mr. Paul Hauge, a former teacher of ours that we all love and remember fondly. Duane, before we go though, can you see that on the screen?
Yeah, I see that.
Recognize that guy?
Sure do. That'd be my dad.
Yep. And then how about that guy? Can you see him? Oh, let me try it again. I'm not real tech savvy sometimes. How about that? Can you see that one?
Yeah, I recognize that guy.
Yeah,
yeah.
Somebody sent me these pictures to use for the podcast. So I was excited to show you those. Thought those were pretty neat. Yep.
That goes way back.
Yeah, pretty fun. Like always, at the end here, if you forgot to shout anybody out or you thought of something while we were talking, is there anything else that comes to mind when you think of Britt Wrestling or any of your coaches and teachers or friends or anything like that?
I think we pretty much covered it. Yeah.
Yeah.
really fortunate to have a Bob Sanger and an Al De Leon in our time, and they were just great coaches, and thankful to have worked with them back then.
Yeah, me too. I didn't know Coach De Leon as well because he was out of school by the time I was in school, and his health wasn't the greatest. But every once in a while, I'd run into him and just say hi quickly. But always just heard amazing things about the guy. And then Coach Sanger, what more can you say about the guy? And Mrs. Sanger, and you name it, all sorts of people that are just, legends and pillars of this community. And I'm glad that we can be a part of it. So, Duane, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate it. And it was, we've been talking since like last summer about setting this up, and then we were going to do it in November, and you weren't feeling too hot. So we postponed a few times. So I was glad that we actually got to get this one done and meet each other in person, per se, if you can say that, on a Zoom call. But I appreciate your time, and
You're welcome.
glad you got to tell your story a little bit. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
You bet. All right. Thanks, everybody, and go Eagles.
Go Eagles.